it's really important for people to understand that ChatGPT is not Google. I mean, you could use it to ask it questions or to, find things on the internet, but at the end of the day, that's not really where the value is in the language models. And, from my perspective, somebody who has tons of content out on the internet, it's relatively easy for me to train my version of ChatGPT to talk like me, write like me, and to some degree think like me, because I've got literally thousands of pieces of content that it can ingest and learn from. So, I want to caution agents out there because number one, it's not as simple as paying 20 bucks a month or whatever it is for ChatGPT 4.0. You really kind of have to know what you're doing in order to make it work to your benefit. And as we get into this conversation, I have a feeling that some of the more enterprising producers and agency principals out there are like, well, I could just build this for myself. Okay, Sparky, if you think that's where you're, I mean, keep thinking that, but this goes way deeper than that. So, from a engineering or development standpoint, what does that look like inside the operation? I mean, to me, I feel like to get it as precise as you possibly can, there are probably a lot of mundane days in there just doing repetitive tasks over and over again just to get it right.
No, you're absolutely right, and I've actually have heard brokers say to me, "Oh, I can probably build this myself," and I totally agree with you. I think, okay, that's great. Now anybody can download ChatGPT, Llama, any other large language models, and start asking some questions. But does it really understand insurance, right? So to me, if someone were to ask ChatGPT, describe an umbrella, well, guess what? It's probably going to describe for you that little thing that pops up and keeps you protected from rain. But if you're going to ask it to understand what does an umbrella mean from a contractual perspective and offering excess liability coverage under certain lines of coverage, the system's not trained to do that out of the box. And it certainly isn't trained to answer those questions at an enterprise level, right? It's very simple to go in and ask any of the LLMs single point questions and you get a single point response. But to actually use engineers like we have been doing with our LLMs to create prompts for the system to actually understand the nuances of insurance contractual language, that takes a lot. So to answer your other question, what does that actually look like? Our engineers are spending their days, nights, weekends, basically prompting the system so that it understands all the nuances within insurance. And we're not done. This is something that you can't just start this process and expect it to be done in a week. This takes months and months and months, especially if you're a company like Blue Pond, where we are focused on the commercial application, but we also deal with property, general liability, BOPs, all of the lines of coverages, whether they're admitted or not admitted. And quite frankly, even when the system gets involved in some of the E&S management endorsements, that is really where you're going to see some of the magic happen.
So we've given them what a learned language model is or a large language model is. We've talked a little bit about the prompting, teaching, and all of that. Time to get down to brass tacks. I mean, I think we've probably got some people saying, okay, well, what is it that these guys actually do? And I know you touched on it a little bit, but talk about the use case. I mean, you've got 8 clients now, and I agree. The average listener probably thinks, oh, wow, like, great, you have 8 clients, but you had none, 6,
Right.
8 months ago. And you're at a point where you're now ready to start bringing people on. And that's one of the things that I really respect about how you guys have built this product is you're just not going to throw it out there until it's 100% ready to go. And I do know, that there's been plenty of beta testing in the different products that are available right now. So, tell them what you guys do specifically and how agents and brokers have been using you over the course of the last couple of months.
Sure. Well, at the heart of everything that we do, David, our system is called the PNC Copilot. That is really where the large language model resides. And from that, we've actually created modules to answer some of those use cases. And the first one I'm going to talk about is really policy checking and quote comparisons. And for those of you that are listening that might not know what that means, there are almost 1 million people in the United States and more overseas, that their sole job is to basically check the accuracy of a quote that comes in from multiple carriers. So, and that process can take anywhere between 20 minutes to over 3 hours, and sometimes even more if we have a large auto schedule or a large property schedule. So we're literally, and I know we're audio, but from a visual perspective, you have CSRs, ASRs that are in the back rooms, literally going from one policy to the next and back and forth, creating their own Excel documents to make sure that they have the right checklist for them. So what we've done is we've actually created a template by line of business that I affectionately refer to as the Goldilocks template, meaning it's not too detailed and it's not too little detailed, so that we give our clients a very solid and I think a very comprehensive analysis of the contract. So that's number one. Number two is we actually offer generative AI as a pass. So platform as a service. It's probably better than calling it a GAS, a Gen AI as a service. But from that particular area, there are actually several modules as well. So we can, and this would be more applicable to, let's say, an MGA or a carrier, whereby we can actually do a submission ingestion, whereby we extract the information and we're agnostic as to how we get it. It doesn't have to be in a particular format. That's another beautiful component of working with a language model. We then analyze that submission, comparing it against the underwriting guidelines of the company, and then actually scoring it for them, so that underwriters, when they come in into their desktop, they don't have to necessarily start just going through a pile. All of that underwriting pre-work, and I'm a previous I would say a recovering underwriter from years gone by, that work is mundane. No one really likes that. They really like making intelligent decisions. So all of that mundane checking is actually can be passed off to someone like a Blue Pond, and we tee that up for the broker to make back up to the underwriter, so that their day is more efficient and they can focus on the accounts that their company wants them to focus on.
So I think that there's possible confusion in the marketplace, because there's a big difference between policy review and policy check-in. And this is actually one of the things that Pranav and I talked about when we spent some time chatting at InsurTech Connect in Vegas last week. How do you define the difference in those two things?
Well, for us, a quote comparison would be, here's an example. You may get 3 or 4 quotes from Hartford, Travelers, CNA, whomever, and it's required that the ASR actually check that against the application. And our system can actually do that. And we have no limitation as to how many different quotes that we have out there. And I would say that our secret sauce is that we have a very robust policy library, which I'm not necessarily sure if our competitors have that or not. But so, for example, if you were to get a quote from Hartford and they're actually referencing just the policy numbers, you're not actually getting the forms, but you're getting the numbers. Our system that can actually check that policy and do the contractual comparison for you, and not have to rely on getting those forms from Hartford. The policy comparison is where you have the expiring policy and you are comparing that to what actually happens, what is actually issued by the carrier in that renewal format.
Got it. How do the carriers feel about it? I mean, is this something that they're looking down on and glad that you're working on this and solving this problem? Are they indifferent to it? Is there any threat to them in any way?
I don't think that I haven't heard any overt threats or any concerns from them. I mean, they're excited about when we talk about underwriting submission ingestion, as well as claims ingestion as well, because we can certainly help them as well. So to me, they're looking for Gen AI partners that can help them. I don't think that they see us as a threat.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you would be, but you never know with technology. We're in an industry that desperately needs to move forward, and it seems like it's a very serious process for that to happen when it comes to tech.
Sure.
I would argue that in the last 5 years, or the last probably at least the last 10, but maybe even just the last 5, we've seen significant gains in development of technology. But I feel like a lot of the time technology was being developed but never adopted because it wasn't getting bought. There was no buy-in at the agent level. And I don't know what I don't know who to blame for that. I don't know if it's because It was an aging population of agency principle that didn't see where things were headed. I don't know if it's because agents are cheap and they don't want to invest in tech. I mean, I'm on the record multiple times of saying technology is a team member in your agency. You have to look at it as a team member and not an expense. You're going to get a return on the investment that you spend on technology, unlike any other bill that you have. But I find that agents a lot of times look at something and the first thing they see is, oh, that's $500 a month. Forget it. That's way too expensive. Meanwhile, they're not paying attention to the fact that it's doing the work of two bodies, and how much are you paying for those two people to do that same process? You have to think through those things. I think the other thing is people get scared by it, man. I mean, Chat GPT specifically, I'll use it as an example only because it's the one most people widely know. But I mean, there's still hallucinations with it and other things where you might get a completely, like to your point, if you're asking a question about an umbrella, you're probably going to get the traveler's logo or something that it talks, to repel rain.
Right.
I don't know that that's a model problem as much as it is you didn't ask the question the right way. But I mean, that goes back to, oh, now I have to learn how to talk in the language so this thing understands. It all boils down to this. We have to learn in our industry, any industry. Sometimes you got to slow down to speed up. We want to try to get from point A to point B so quickly that we don't realize sometimes it's okay to like build the road there so that you're always going to be able to get there the most efficiently instead of trying to go the long way every time because you don't want to slow down to build the platform that you need.
That's right.
I also think that because of that, you're talking about a pretty fundamental part of the agency life. Policy
Agreed.
check-in, policy review, looking to see how a quote compares to the expiring policy, or even looking to see how an issued policy compares to the quote to make sure there's no discrepancies. That has been a very deliberate and manual process for a long, long time.
Agreed.
I think that there's probably a lack of comfort from an agency to allow machine learning to do that for them, because Betty Sue has done that for 20 years and she's the absolute best. There's no way this computer is going to do it as good as Betty Sue. Maybe you still need Betty Sue to be involved. Maybe she needs to do the final review, the final check. But if you can flatten that curve and give Betty Sue more time to do the things that she really likes to do, because she hasn't said anything to you, Mr. Agency Principal, but she hates policy check-in and policy review. There are days she calls in sick when she knows that she's going to have to do that, and she doesn't come to work as a result. So you may actually be helping the culture of your agency by letting her have less hands-on in the entire process, but sign off on the ultimate process. And the other thing is, maybe Betty Sue's also really good at cross-selling. Well, if you give her more time on revenue-bearing activities when she's servicing the book, that's going to help. And the other thing is, depending on the use case for Blue Pond, you may actually give her a cheat sheet on where she needs to go for cross-selling, because it may find that there are gaps or things missing that she needs to remedy, which ultimately turns into more revenue for the agency.